Hey everyone, in this session we will discuss some basic question answers that may be asked from OOPS. First question is, what is a class? Class is a blueprint for creating objects. That means class define the general behavior that a whole category of objects can have. Okay. Second question, what is an object? Object is an instance of a class. Everything around you an object. Whatever you pick up is an object and that belongs to any particular class. Any class. Okay. So object follows all the general behaviors of the class and also can have their own unique traits. Okay. Now the third question. What is a constructor? Constructor? Init. This is a constructor. Now the question is, can we change the name from init to something else? No, init is fixed. That is what is mandatory. Double underscore, init, double underscore. That creates the difference between constructor and the other methods inside a class. Now the question is constructor mandatory? Is it required? Yes, constructor must be present in the class. But why is that so? Why it is required? And why do we need constructor? Why there is a separate method known as constructor? Now the answer is that suppose you want to access getName or you want to access read odometer. How can you access that? By using any object. mycar.update odometer, mycar.read odometer. These are only accessed when user try to access those. Whenever any object is created, that is whenever any user is created and user wants to call this function as per their need, this function gets executed. But constructor is not like that. Whenever an user is created, the constructor is executed. You understand the difference? Other functions gets called when the user calls them, but constructor gets executed whenever the user is created, even before calling. That is the difference. But the question is, why is that a need? Why do we need something that will automatically gets executed whenever the user is created? This is because suppose you are writing a program and where you have some must features that you don't want to give the control to the user because other functions will get executed when the user calls them. So user have the control, but here I don't want to give the control to the user. So it contains some instructions which are mandatorily to be executed whenever the user is created. Like suppose you want to create a connection with the database. So you don't want that user will click and then the database will be connected. No, database will be automatically connected whenever the user is created. So those instructions you keep inside the constructor. Okay. Now see what is the next question. Is it possible? No, it is not possible. We have discussed. Next is self. What is a self? We have seen self. Self is used in every method and also while declaring the attributes. Okay, now the question is what is self? We have studied self is a reference to the object. That means self is the current object. When my car is created, self is pointing to my car. When another object is created, self is pointing to that object. Because in OOPS, these methods, update odometer, increment odometer, read odometer, they are inside the same class, but they can talk to each other. So to make a communication, you need a link. That's what self does. Self is pointing to the user. Self is pointing to the current user, the current object. So that by using the self, you can access all the methods. You can create a link between the methods. Okay. So whenever marker is created, it will be passed to the self. Self is nothing but a reference to the object. Or we can say self is the current object. Okay. So whenever any object is created, we need to create a link. We need to create a reference so that we can put the attributes. We can use the methods. That's what self does. Clear? Now the next question is whether self word is necessary or we can give another name. No, it's not like the init. Self is not necessary. You can give any name. Here I have given S. See, instead of self, I have used S. So by using S also, you can access whatever you want to access. Self is just a convention. Self is not mandatory. You can give any name. That is just the reference to the current object. Clear? Next, what is an attribute? Name, age, color, breed. These are all attributes. What is a method? When you are doing any behavior, acting, sitting, dancing, walking, driving. These are some process. These are known as method. These are known as functions. These are known as behaviors. Okay. Now, what is the difference between function and method? It's simple. Functions is when you separately write it. That is a function. But method is when you write it inside the class. So functions written inside the class become methods. Okay. So that's why it's better to call them methods. But one more difference is how they are called. Suppose functions. Here I have created a list L1234. When I want the length of the list, I write len of L. So it will give me the length of the list. But I want to append something to the list. Then I write L dot append 5. So len is also a function. Append is also a function. Then why are we calling in separate way? This is because len is a particular function. A len can be applied on string, set, dictionary, tuple, on anything. So len is a separate function. But what is append? Append is a method. Method of which? Method must belong to a class. Append is a method of list class. Append belongs to list class. That is why the ways we are calling len and append are different. Okay. So function is called in this way, but method is called in different way. So append is a method, len is a function. That's what the difference. Now next is, can I create multiple instances? Yes, we have seen my dog. That is an instance. Self is referring to my dog now. Next, your dog. That is also an different instance. Now self is referring to the your dog. Okay. And dog is the class name. We are passing the arguments, parameters. Any number of parameters we can pass. So we can create as many as number of instances. That is what is the main advantage of using OOPS. Clear? So these are the basic questions, very basic questions that may be asked from OOPS. Okay, bye. Happy learning.